Okay, hi everyone. I am Josh Lee. I'm going to talk to you about OpenTelemetry. I see a lot of people here, so this is a popular topic, which makes sense. Uh, this talk was originally delivered as like a 35 to 45-minute talk. It was written with Adriana Villela. She's awesome. We also just recently published a blog post about this on the New Stack. At the end, I'll share some resources. But let's try and do this in 10 minutes. So, okay, this all started about a year ago, a little more. I got angry at something that I saw from a marketer, as will happen, right? I'm also in marketing. I get it. We all have something to sell. But, there's this take that OpenTelemetry just sort of magically solves all of your problems when it's time to switch vendors. Now, the vendor switching story is certainly better because of OpenTelemetry, but it is not as perfect as the marketers would have you believe. So let's dig into that. First of all, I love standards. I am a huge nerd for open standards and open protocols especially. If I had more time, I would ask you all what some of your favorite standards are, but I don't, so I'm just going to list some that I got from previous talks. Stop signs are an international standard. USB-C is a freaking awesome standard. McDonald's is a standard that someone said was their favorite. So yeah, standards are great. OpenTelemetry is a standard. This is, there's actually this brand called No Name Brand in Canada. This is actually what like all of their food looks like. It's really cool. Anyways, why OpenTelemetry, right? So OpenTelemetry doesn't really exist. OpenTelemetry is not the first attempt, right, at this universal standard for monitoring. So why was it successful? I would argue it's because of distributed tracing, right? So before distributed tracing, we needed monitoring. Monitoring begs to be open. You need 100% coverage. You need to be able to get into every aspect of your system when you're trying to do monitoring. That's a lot easier if the code that's doing it is open source and you can modify it and contribute to it, and the vendors that are providing you libraries and tools and frameworks can also modify the code that's providing your instrumentation. So monitoring, observability, it begs to be open. In the before times, we were fine, right? We had logs and metrics. Those are sort of de facto standards. Logs are just text with attributes. Metrics are just numbers with attributes. And so we didn't really need anything more, right? Like we had Prometheus, we have syslog, we had ELK format. We were good. But then distributed computing came along, and as all of the marketers will tell you accurately, distributed computing demands distributed tracing because a single stack trace no longer has the information that we need to debug a user-facing issue. So we need distributed tracing. And that's what changed the game. Because when you have distributed tracing, all of a sudden the Java developers have to care what the Python developers are doing. Because we have this little bit of, in order to create a distributed trace, a complete one, we need context to be passed from one service to the next, right? So it kind of completely changes what it means to monitor, because now everything has to talk to everything else and share just this tiny piece of context with that trace ID and that span ID. So it's new. And we need something that we can embed in all of our code artifacts. This was first solved by vendors, right, with their distributed tracing agents. But then the problem is that we've shipped vendor code in all of our artifacts. And if we change vendors, we have to change all of our artifacts. And if I'm a vendor myself trying to give you a piece of software, I either can't bake in the instrumentation, or if I do, I have to choose a vendor and force that observability vendor on you if you want to work with my stuff. Or I have to support all of them. Yikes. So OpenTelemetry exists because of distributed tracing. All right, what makes it vendor neutral? Well, there are layers. It's like a layer cake, right? So we have the semantic conventions, we have the API and the SDK, even the API and the SDK, right? That's a boundary of vendor neutrality, because you can basically, as a vendor, I can ship a library that makes API calls and depends on the OpenTelemetry API, but I don't have to make a decision about the SDK for you. You can still run the official SDK, you can run one modified by your vendor, you can write your own. So I'm not making decisions for you, vendor neutrality. OTLP, I'm going to talk about that a lot, but that enables interoperability, which is my favorite part of vendor neutrality. And then of course we have the collector, which is a vendor neutral agent. But the key piece to all of this, I would argue the most important part, is the semantic conventions. Because with the semantic conventions, we have a way to describe everything using the same language, using the same terminology. These ingredients are not the same, right? These food products, but the ingredients are listed using the exact same format that is interchangeable and even international. This is what makes OpenTelemetry awesome. But I said I would talk about interoperability, right? This is what's enabled by both those semantic conventions and OTLP, the transport protocol. So interoperability, it's not about, right, It's not about, oh, I'm going to break up with my vendor and our whole company is going to move to another vendor and we're going to do it like overnight because we just point our OTLP exporter to another endpoint. That's not what's beautiful about this. What's beautiful about this is you get to use everything you want all the time starting today. You don't have to choose just one tool, right? So this is like the common way that OpenTelemetry is sort of presented. It's like you have your OpenTelemetry collector and then it's feeding off into 3 different backends, one for each signal. You can do that. That's awesome. You can also do something like this, right? You can send all of your telemetry signals to one vendor. And if you're, trying to compare, you haven't decided yet, you can also send all of your telemetry signals to another vendor. Now, don't do this for a long time because it's going to get expensive, but it's a great way to do a bake-off. Then we could do things like this, right? So I talk to a lot of companies that have retention requirements for their logs. We need to keep our logs for 7 years because someone wants to be able to audit them, or, for whatever reason, we have these requirements. If you send 7 years of logs to an observability vendor, that's expensive and probably silly, right? So you don't need to do that. You can still use your fancy observability vendor platform for all of your recent telemetry, and you can also fork your historical logs off to somewhere cheap like S3 or something on-premise and keep them for 7 years. And you don't really care that, it's not that easy to search because they're just there for audit requirements. You also do something like this, right? Like say you have multiple teams, or more commonly, say your team acquired another team or your company acquired another company and now you're all integrating, but you haven't fully integrated yet. Well, guess what? You can just keep using all of the tools. And then you have that central SRE team that actually needs some signals from all of the teams, no matter which tools they're using. Well, you can do that too. So this is all enabled by the vendor neutrality of OpenTelemetry. It's not about switching vendors. It means you get to have your cake and eat it too. Again, if you're willing to pay for 2 cakes, if you're splitting things between multiple backends. Now, this is all awesome on the instrumentation and collection side. It's not so vendor neutral once the data gets into your backend, right? And I had to cut a whole section out about what actually does and doesn't come with you when you do switch vendors. There's a blog post if you want to go into depth on that. But yeah, we need all of this stuff, right? And everything over there in yellow, the OpenTelemetry project is explicitly not providing to us. That's where we get to choose. But what if we wanted to open that up? Well, here's a big graphic of some of my favorite open source projects. Most of these are databases, except for the gray things on the bottom that are visualization tools. And then we've got the query languages mixed in there, right? Star means it's under Foundation. Foundations are awesome because that means the vendor neutrality and the governance is guaranteed. But yeah, so we have a burgeoning ecosystem of open source databases that you can then open up to provide multi-access to other tools. And that's what I think is really, really cool about bringing vendor neutrality to the backend. I'll pause for phones. Cool. This thing's really, wow, okay. So yes, I mentioned multi-access. This is why I think opening up the backends and making them vendor neutral as well is really, really cool. Because now, in the world that we're living in now, right, it's not just the SREs that are consuming this data. And we're no longer happy to just send this data off to the vendors and let them use it to train their models, right? At enterprise scale, we want to be training our own models. We want ownership of this stuff. So now the SREs get the analysis tool that they want, and they can swap that out if they need to, right? We can do machine learning. We can do our own internal model training if we want to, because we own the data or we have access to it somehow, right? We could even switch tools to another backend if we could actually get all of the data out. Someone earlier was mentioning that exporting a week's worth of data from their observability vendor would take a week. So we're not here yet, but I think this would be really cool if we could get here. And then last thing on there, right, is like the executive reporting tool. Who here has an executive that's like really attached to the way things are right now? And if you try to change your observability tool, they're gonna be like, no, buy reports. Yeah, so if you open up the back and everybody gets everything they want all the time, that's cool, wow. Okay, so I don't know how I am on time. There's no timer in here, but let's wrap up. OpenTelemetry is the counterpoint to this comic. Oh, there is a timer. Cool. I'm right on time. Yeah, it's the counterpoint to this topic because it's open. There's right, it's multiple vendors cooperating together, which is really beautiful. It's one of the most inclusive tech communities I have been involved in. And it's the stewardship of the CNCF, right, that maintains that openness and that interoperability so no one vendor can take it over and make it theirs. And how this benefits you is you get portability, right? You can change tools if you need to. If you really need to break up with your vendor, you can, and it's going to be a lot easier than it would have been before OpenTelemetry. It's still going to be painful, and it's still probably going to take months, not days, but you can do it. It gives you interoperability. This is my favorite part. We talked all about this, right? You get to use everything all together all the time. And ultimately, you get choice. That's all. Thanks.